cycle of uncertainty. One day I spoke with my good friend and fellow pastor, Jim Cymbala. He'd been away from his church in New York City during the height of the pandemic there, and as was true for so many of those in ministry, his heart was heavy. When he told me a large percentage of pastors in California and New York were considering leaving the ministry due to the difficulties they were facing. At one point, California had even made it against the law to sing in church. The gravity of the reality we were in hit me hard. Knowing so many were contemplating quitting in the midst of this trial reminded me of those mentioned in Hebrews, who had also considered throwing in the towel, hanging up the gloves, and moving on. I'm sure abandoning the faith and going back to the world's ways crossed their minds in hopes that it would lessen the difficulties they faced. Perhaps they even wondered if the Christian faith was worth the effort, because it just didn't seem to be working for them anymore. In Hebrews chapter 11, often called the Hall of Faith, we are introduced to these individuals and how they responded when life got hard. That chapter is also the basis of our study on kingdom heroes, which is why I'm calling the place we're about to enter the Hall of Heroes Museum. These verses give us both the backdrop and conclusions to the stories we'll explore as we examine the core DNA and features that show up in each hero. But first, in chapter 10, the author of Hebrews has something important to say to those who want to be kingdom heroes. Do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. For yet in a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back to destruction, but of those who have faith to the persevering of the soul. Verses 35 through 39. He's telling us what we most need to live as a kingdom hero. Endurance. We need the will to keep going when life gets tough. But he also throws in the caveat that we are to have this endurance based on our faith. In fact, the way my righteous one shall live by faith is worded is important because of what it implies. In other words, faith ought to be our modus operandi. It should be the way we flow. Faith isn't a concept to visit, but rather a lifestyle to embrace. Thus, if we're not living by faith, the conclusion based on this passage is this: we're not living righteously. Scripture clearly states that the righteous live by faith. Are you living by faith? Before we approach the museum, ask yourself this foundational question. Am I living by faith? Start here. Start with you. Because if living by faith isn't how you roll, studying the lives of kingdom heroes is useless. You might as well stop this book before we go any further. Sure, you'll gain knowledge from these chapters, but without the wisdom and courage to apply it, that knowledge will do you no good. Living by faith is to be a lifestyle for the believer. Romans chapter 1, verse 17. I encourage you to make the pursuit of increasing the level of faith you put into action your highest priority, not just settling for learning about other people who lived their faith well. God has a destiny for you that can be reached only if you choose to follow him in like manner. And so, if you've answered yes to the question, am I living by faith? I invite you to go through the Hall of Heroes Museum with me. This magnificent place will help you get to know each hero in Hebrews chapter 11 all the more. Before we go inside the museum, we see an enormous fountain with statues of various kingdom heroes in the midst of it. Let's take a moment to walk around the entire structure and read the statement engraved on it, ensuring we know what a kingdom hero is. A kingdom hero is a committed Christian who perseveres by faith in order to experience spiritual victory and